Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshack if you want to call me by my in-game name. In this video, we're going to be talking about some of the more important cards that are going to be rotating out when TGT leaves us, along with LOE and BRM. But in this particular video, we're just going to be focusing in on TGT. BRM and LOE should be in videos either after this or before this, so those will be coming. But due to the length of the video, we're kind of just focusing on each expansion or adventure mode as a whole and just talking about the cards within that and solely within just that one expansion. So with that said, we're going to talk about the cards again that kind of stand out to me that are leaving, and the decks that are impacted by those cards leaving. So let's pull up the little side window here in our collection, and we'll take a look at our first card, which is Living Roots. Keep in mind, we're going to be going through all the classes down the list, with last being the neutral cards. Again, we're not going to cover every card because not every card is, good. We're only going to be discussing the cards that really stand out to me as like, oh crap, that card's leaving. We should probably make a note of it and kind of talk about the decks and the card itself. So the first card is Living Roots. So while this card may not be the most biggest card, right? It's only a 1-mana card. It's definitely, I think, one of those key cards that is found in so many Druid decks, whether you're playing an aggressive Druid deck, a token Druid deck, or all the way down the line for more controlled Druid deck, whether you're playing Jade Golems or kind of a ramp Druid. This card is definitely found in it, and it's the ability to not only do 2 damage or summon 1/1 saplings, but it's very versatile and it synergizes well with Fandral. Plus it's a common, so a lot of not that it's a common, but a lot of players can kind of like I said, fit this into a lot of different decks, whether they're, again, playing aggressive or control. It just has the flexibility, plus it only costs 1 mana. So Living Roots is definitely going to hurt the Druids early game, no doubt. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see like another small, maybe a 1 to 2 mana card in the upcoming adventure mode to kind of not replace this, not like do the same thing, but something that's going to help out Druids early game, besides of course just having wild growths and things of that nature, because this was like one of the cards that you'd almost keep 100% on mulligan, just because it does such a good job at killing early game minions. Darnassus Ass Pirate. Oh, I know it's aspirant, but I call it Ass Pirate, guys. I have so many people are like, oh, you're naming them wrong. I do it on purpose. And this used to be like a big swinger in the deck, and it was like found, it was once upon a time it was never played. Then it was played two of them in the deck, then one, and now it's never played. But at one time this was a really popular card, but now Druid is just kind of folded away, so that's not really a big hit. Mulch, however, this is a card that has actually made its way never before seen. It was never played in Druid. Then it's like 2 copies at one point in time because of all the Shaman's 4-drop 7/7. Then it was a 1 copy in a Druid deck at times, and then some right now Druid decks play 1, some Druid decks play none. But Druid has a problem with single target removal. All they have is like Wrath and Swipe, so it's not like they're like a Shaman or a Mage where they can polymorph or Hex or Siphon Soul or Blast Crystal Potion. There's not like a whole lot of ways they can get rid of like one giant creature. So as bad as this card is in comparison to cards like Hex and stuff, most of the time Druids will play like it as a one of, just kind of for that, oh shit, your opponent made like a turn 3 12/12 Van Cleef, and normally a Druid would have literally no way to get rid of that besides silencing it. So Mulch is kind of their answer for that. So it's unfortunate to see the only kind of decent single target removal gone by Druid, but Druid never really excelled in it, so it's not really a huge hit, as it wasn't like a staple in most Druid decks, but it still kind of gave you a way if you wanted to tech in cards around, being able to survive against like a single, huge minion, that this kind of gave you a resource to put in your deck to tech around it. But unfortunately that will be leaving us. Savage Combatant, really good beast, and the Inspire give your hero +2 attack. So, you play this card in your hero power, all of a sudden your hero power does 3 damage, which can start trading into a lot of different minions, especially if you have other cards like Feral Rage, or things of that nature. So solid beast. Went well in Beast Druid, goes well, and there's like a very silly Druid running around that's, the Beast Murloc Dragon, and it definitely runs Savage Combatant. And I've even, at one time, there was, I believe, 1 Savage Combatant found in the Malygos Druid. Not that that is really popular anymore, but this card actually found its way not only in Beast Druid. So just a good card overall, and definitely it's going to hurt not having this in Beast Druid. So as much as they tried to give the Beast Druid with the Warded, that lets you copy a beast that's on the field and kind of replay it, with it losing this, it's definitely going to hurt the deck even more so than it not already being like that great. I think that's it besides our last legendary here, Avianna. She was originally not really played at all with Druid, right? She came out, people tested her, she was found in like meme Druid decks. There wasn't like a whole lot of like really, I wouldn't say top tier, but a deck that you could play at competitive ranks, still win, and it still have, you know, be fun and have her in here. Then the combo with the Malygos came out before the mean streets, which kind of utilized her a little bit, but then on top of that, when the Coon came out, it made the Malygos version with Avianna even stronger, because you could play Avianna, Coon, refill your mana crystals, and then play all these creatures for only 1 mana. There's also a Cthulhu variant. We've talked about these decks quite a bit on our most popular decks of the month. The monthly meta is what we like to call it. So she's found a way to make herself useful in a pretty competitive deck that's fun to play, and like I said, it's consistently, you know, good. Like, it actually can compete at some of the highest ranks and perform fairly well. So I would definitely say that her leaving us is going to definitely hurt not only the Cthulhu combo, but the Malygos combo decks that she's currently founded, that was recently founded. Unfortunately, it was towards the end of her career being in Standard, but at least she found a couple good decks to be in before she rotates out. So heading into Hunter, Brave Archer, not really found too much. Bear Trap was once really, really powerful in, you know, the super secret Hunter, which was really good before Mean Streets, when Hunter was actually a class, but now the Hunter's not really a class. I can't really, you know, it's hard to say, like, this really good Hunter card is leaving us. It's like, but Hunter just right now sucks. But not always has Hunter been in the position it's in right now. But Bear Trap definitely hurts the class a little bit. King's Elec was a really, really good, solid 2-drop for Hunters. You know, you play King's Elec on 2, and it'll allow you to curve into, let's say, if you get lucky, you get like a 3 or 4 drop, and your opponent gets a 1 or 2 drop. You can curve out really nicely, or it picks up like a Savannah High main. So you're not only does your opponent know you're getting a Savannah High main, which is bad for you because they know your turn 6 play, but you're playing a Savannah High main on turn 6, which is just really nice because Hunters lack the card draw. So if you're able to draw a card with a 2-drop 3/2 that's also counted as a beast, which can be buffed with all the beast synergies in the deck, overall super solid card, and still seen in some Hunter decks today. Lock and Load was a really fun version of Hunter. There was like Yogg and Load, which was popularized and played a lot by Savits. And unfortunately, the deck, of course, died out due to Yogg getting nerfed, and the fact that, you know, more and more decks get refined, meaning some of the more memey decks, or the decks that aren't as powerful, kind of fall out of favor due to the fact that they just can't keep up with those people grinding and just playing the most powerful decks. But still a fun card and sad to leave. Dreadscale never really had its time to shine. Once upon a time, Muster for Battle was a thing, and Dreadscale was good, but that doesn't really happen anymore. Power Shot's an interesting card. It was, again, found in more of like the joking or memey kind of Hunter decks. Also found in sometimes Reno Hunter, but again, those aren't really popular decks, so I can't really say that it's going to be missed a lot. Wrangler, at one time, this guy was like, oh my god, he's gonna summon King Crush every time. It's the most broken card ever. But then people soon found out that, first of all, it's a turn 5 play, and you're only getting a 3/3, plus you're leaving kind of what you're getting up to RNG. You could get like not a Dire Wolf's bad, but I'm trying to think of like an Alpha Wolf, I think it is. It's like a whatever 1-drop beasts are, right? And there's a lot of really bad beasts, but there's a lot of really good beasts. So kind of one of those RNG cards that'll sometimes give you something good, sometimes give you something really bad. But the bad part is, or I would have to say the downside is, if you have to have a beast on the board. So if you don't currently have, like, you have to be at least neutral with your opponent or ahead, which means if you're like, let's say you both have no creatures on the board and you top deck this guy, it hurts you pretty bad in comparison if you, let's say you get like a Stranglethorn Tiger, or like a Stampeding Kodo or something like that. I don't think it's Stampeding Kodo. You know what I'm saying. The 5-drop destroy an enemy minion that's 2 or less attack. So as good as he is, he's not really found that much. Ball of Spiders, meh. Acid Maul's just trash. So moving along. Ooh, for Mage, Arcane Blast. Wow, this is a heavy hitter. This card is made its way into Reno Mage. It's made its way into Tempo Mage. It's one of those cards that synergizes well with anything with spell power, because for 1 mana you can deal 4 damage to a creature. If you have 2 spell power out, then it does 6 damage to a creature, and it only costs 1 mana. Keep in mind that it only can be used against creatures, but for the 1 mana cost, you know, most of the time you can play this like on an Azure Drake, which costs 5 mana. You spend 3, you've netted 4 in there that you've, you know, didn't have to use, and you can develop something else. So Arcane Blast leaving is a big deal for any mages. Fallen Hero, not so much. Still a decent card, no doubt. I mean, it's a card that basically needs to be dealt with unless you're willing to give your opponent's hero power that extra 1 damage, which is bad. Effigy, not one of the most popular secrets, so I can't really say it's a big deal. Polymorph Boar is kind of one of those cards that if you get off like Babbling Book or like Tome, it's kind of cool because it's just an extra polymorph. Besides that, not really a card that people play a lot. Spellslinger, not so much. Dalaran, no. Flame Lance, This is sometimes played in Reno decks. It's kind of floated out and been replaced with the Forbidden Flame or something like that. I forgot. It's the 0 mana card that you can kind of expend however much mana you want to destroy whatever you want. You're not so locked into 5 mana for 8 damage. It's kind of more versatile than that. So Flame Lance, not that popular. The Drake was found in like a Mimi deck, so not really that great either. No big deal. And then the Ronin is actually a pretty solid legendary in my opinion. One that really doesn't see as much play as he maybe should, but the problem is he's just too late game. It's just most of the time, if you're playing against a Shaman or, a Warrior or a Rogue, you're dead by turn 8, and especially like an 8 play that doesn't actively do anything when he crumbs out. Like, at least we know Ysera or Ragnaros, when they come out at the end of the turn, they're actively doing something to the board state, whether they're throwing an 8 damage fireball or they're giving you a card. This guy's Death Rattle, which means it can be polymorphed, it can be returned back to your hand. There's a lot of things your opponent can do to kind of negate his ability of Death Rattle, add 3 Arcane Missiles to your hand, plus he's only a 7/7, so as good as he is, there's just better cards, so it's not like Ronin leaving is not the end of the world for Mage at all. Looking at Paladin. Seal of Champions, found in kind of like an aggro Paladin. Again, aggro Paladin. For the most part, the Paladin class is not really very popular right now. Very similar to the Hunter situation. So it's kind of hard to point out anything that's really big leaving the class. Murloc Knight was once upon a time really powerful and found in actually mid-range Paladin, and unfortunately now it's not so much. It's not even found in Murloc Paladin because it's all revolving around the OTK combo. The Jouster, it was like a one of at one time, but now not so much anymore. Enter the Coliseum. It's basically a bad brawl, and I play one of them in my Murloc Paladin, but that's just because I like to kind of test it out, and sometimes it works out pretty good, sometimes not so much, but not really a heavy hit to the class. Mysterious Challenger. This card got kind of nerfed when Avenge and all the powerhouse of Secret Paladin came about and left us. So this card definitely lost a lot of favor with Avenge going into the wild mode. Now this Mysterious Challenger is going into wild mode, so I'm sure Secret Paladin will still be a powerhouse in wild, but him leaving from standard to wild now really isn't that big of a deal. And Edric the Pure was never really played a whole lot. Not that he's the worst legendary in the world, he's just, why play Edric the Pure for 7 mana when you can just play Tyrion for 8? Priest, Flash Shield. Haven't seen this card played in quite some time. It was played prior to Mean Streets, but not anymore. Agent. Ooh, this is going to be a heavy hitter. So this is actually found in I would want to say every Dragon Priest currently. The fact that it allows you to put up a nice taunt wall early on in the game against all of those, pirate decks and aggressive base decks. So this is pretty nice, along with comboing it with like Power Word Shield and stuff. Plus, again, it's just one of those cards that synergizes well with dragons. If I said pirates before, my bad. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty big loss for the early game of the Dragon Priest. Shadowfiend never really saw its playtime. Holy Champion. This was actually found in Control Priest and Midrange Priest back before. I know Zealot, hopefully I'm saying his name. Zealot played a lot of this card and pulled off a lot of sweet OTKs, but overall not the most popular or powerful. Spawn of Shadows. I played this in my Burn Priest deck, but again, really not one of the most. It's no big deal to leaving the class. It's not hurting any of the main decks right now. And then Confessor Paletress, really cool card, very interesting card, but again, a lot of RNG. You most of the time have to play her at 9 mana, so you play her for 7. You hero power, so you can get at least 1 legendary out of her, and then most of the time she dies right away because she only has 4 HP. But if she ends up living, you can just keep hero powering and summoning random legendaries. The thing is, sometimes you can summon Lorewalker Chose and Van Cleaves and Nat Pagle and things like that just don't help you. And other times you get like Chromagus, you get Neff, Alexstrasza, Rag, Ysera, all these high quality minions. So she definitely kind of like one of those RNG just fun legendaries, but not a legendary that we see in a lot of high competitive priest decks. Moving to Rogue, Buccaneer. This is found in kind of the tempo Rogue deck that we've been playing. It was one of the cards to lead us into Legend when the first Mean Streets set came out. We played this on our Rogue deck and it performed fairly well because not only is it a pirate, but its ability is pretty good. So it's going to hurt the tempo-based Rogue deck a little bit. Cut Purse is pretty good, but not really found in a lot of Rogue decks. No big deal. Moving to Burgle, our ultimate value Rogue deck is going to take a hit. We can no longer play it in Standard because Burgle is definitely one of the core cards of the deck, being able to basically generate 2 cards for 1, and we especially steal them from our opponent's class, which is very nice, which means they can't necessarily play around them. So that's going to hurt our deck that we made. Shady Dealer. It's a good card. It could be a 3-drop, 5/4 if you have a pirate. But if you don't, then it's kind of just a 3-drop 4/3, which still isn't bad, but it's not the greatest. Rogue is kind of in a spot right now where they don't really need Shady Dealer, but not to say it's a bad card. Looking at Poison Blade, this card is just bad, and this card's good in Arena, but doesn't really hurt us. And then a Nub. It's not really found in any of the Rogue decks currently. Not to say that if, let's say you journey from below and get a Nub and you're playing against, a Control Warrior or something like that, it's really good. But in most situations, playing a 9-drop with 4 HP in this meta is not going to go well for you for the most part. So, not a card that you go out of your way to play, and it's not going to hurt the Rogue deck at all, but it's still nice to have, if you get journey from below against a control-based deck. Looking at Shaman. Shaman's going to hurt a lot, losing their grand tournament cards. Ancestral Knowledge, found in some of the more control-based Shamans. It's leaving us. Totem Golem, though. They're losing their Totem Golem. So this is huge. The 2-drop 3/4 powerhouse of the early game of Shamans is leaving. I can tell you one thing, that Shaman will still be decent after this rotation of cards, because I'm sure they're not going to totally wipe them off the face of the earth, but they're losing a lot of their super powerful early game, and that's kind of one of the reasons they gave them Jade Claws and Spirit Claws, is because they are losing Totem Golem and Tunnel Trog, which is whoa. Elemental Destruction is the large-scale AoE that a lot of the more control-based Shamans require, so this actually is a pretty big deal for those playing Control Shaman. Like myself, them playing, N'Zoth or Death Rattle. Healing Wave is a big deal. Now where you have to rely on Jinsu Water Speaker. Not to say that card's bad, but this can restore up to 14 health for only 3 mana if you win the Joust, which is huge. So a lot of the, like I said, a lot of the Control Shaman decks are really going to hurt with the loss of Elemental Destruction and Healing Wave. Tuskar Totemic, for as good as it was at one time, it got nerfed to now be, not fucking unbelievably powerful. For those of you who remember the Tuskar Totemic days and basically the RNG fest that was once I would have to say the Tuskar Totemic era was one of the worst eras in Hearthstone ever. This soul card determined almost every single Shaman game ever. So for those of you who remember, I'm sure those memories are bad. Thunderbluff Valiant, though, is leaving. Holy moly mackerel, guys. So this guy, if you guys also remember the era of Tuskar Totemic, you'll remember the era of mid-range Shaman, ruler of all. This guy was definitely, you play 2 of them in every Shaman deck you can, besides maybe aggressive base, but even aggressive base you could throw him in there. But most of the time he's a little bit too slow for the aggressive base. But this guy, if you have totems on the field and you hero power, you're going to win the game. If he sits on the field for longer than a turn or 2, you win the game. Just super powerful, and if it's basically the same effect as Chromagus or Ysera. If he just stays on the board, he spirals out of control, you gain too much value, and you win the game. So with Thunderbluff leaving, they're actually going to have to add some form of more totem synergies, right? Because cards like this, the totems have always been a part of the Shaman class, and at one point the totems really never did anything. People were like, the Shaman needs more totem synergies, so they make cards like Thing from Below, Thunderbluff Valiant, the Totem Carver, and now that all of these totem synergy cards are leaving, we just have kind of this shell of a Shaman that's gonna still have totems, but we've lost a lot of our super synergy cards. So we still have the Witch Doctor and Bloodlust and stuff, but I think there's gonna need to be more than that, in my opinion. And Mistcaller, not really a high priority card. A lot of people said this was gonna be one of the most broken cards ever to be released when it was being hyped, and then actually playing it is not so much. Not that it's a bad card, it's just not found in really any powerful Shaman deck at the moment. For Warlock, we have well, actually, we have Tiny Knight, which is found in Discard Warlock, but not so much. Wrathguard, which was at one point found in Zoo Warlock, and it was actually pretty powerful in there. I still enjoy the card. I think it's very, very solid in days that Totem Golem wasn't around. And by not around, like let's say, like, for 2 mana, how do I explain this? If you're going to play the upfront cost of 2 mana and you're going to take the damage that this takes, you shouldn't have to worry about your opponent also having a 2 mana 3/4 that contests your 2 mana when they didn't really have to pay any life points, but you did. But they had to pay 1 overload, but the overload doesn't really matter because all of your cards have overload. So it's a good card, but unfortunately it didn't really get to see the light it should have because of cards like Totem Golem. Dread Steed, another cool card that probably didn't see as much play as it should. It was found in more of like meme kind of warlocks than anything, but it's a really good card that definitely changed the games that where it was played. It kind of shined in, and at one point it was found in Reno Lock for quite some time, and worked fairly well in there. And it was also found in Zoth Warlock, where they could just make a whole field full of Dread Steeds. Fist of Jaraxxus, not really seen too much. It was tested in Zoo, and it was tested in Discard Lock. At one point, some people ran 2, some people ran 1, some people ran none. I was never really a favorite of Fist of Jaraxxus, but it was tested, and it was all right. Dark Bargain, never really played. Void Crusher, same thing. Wilford Fizzlebank's just bad, and then Fearsome Doomguard. It was more of like you can get this card from Bane of Doom, which made it good, but not so much a card that you would actively just play in your deck. With it being a 7-drop 6/8, no stats, it's just there was no point to play it. So moving to Warrior, holy moly, Alexstrasza's Champion is leaving us. So all of you who really enjoy the Dragon Warrior, whether it be Tempo Dragon Warrior or the Control Dragon Warrior, Alexstrasza's Champion was one of those 2-drops, which could be if you're holding a dragon, turn into a 3/3 with charge, which was very good. So Tempo Dragon Warrior taking a very big hit there. Bolster, no big deal. Taunt Warrior was never a thing. Bash, however, Bash was really good card, whether you're playing it again in kind of a control deck or a more of a mid-range deck. It was still very solid. It net you 6 basically damage as a whole if you're playing against a more aggressive based deck, but if you're playing against, a more control based deck, you could use it just to gain armor to combo with Shield Slam, or you could kill yourself a pretty sizable minion. King's Defender really never saw light because of cards like a Fiery War Axe. Unfortunately, with cards like Fiery War Axe, any other weapon between the slots of 2 to 4 have to compete with that card because it's just so good. And because Taunt Warrior was never a thing, this card was never a thing. Kind of Blizzard half-assing the Taunt class, or the Taunt kind of archetype or whatever. No. And then Varian. This guy was found in Tempo Warrior at one point in time, but then as we know, Tempo Warrior turned into Dragon Tempo Warrior, and then slowly but surely Varian kind of cycled out and really hasn't seen play since then. But yes, this card saw play at one point in time, but now it's not so much. 10 mana for a 7/7 that doesn't actively do anything besides draw cards, and those cards could be cards with Battle Cry, so you don't get the effect. Like Justicar could be really devastating, so there's just better cards to be played. Moving into the neutral cards, taking a look at here, we have Injured Cavalier, or Calvodier, hopefully I'm saying it right, I'm probably butchering it, was found in the Camel Hunter, which means that the Camel pulled out a free 1-drop for either player, but because you didn't actually play this card, the Battle Cry didn't trigger, which means you basically got him as a 2/4 for the ability of playing your Camel, but because that deck isn't popular, this card's not popular, and yada yada yada. But it was actually played at one point in time. Flame Juggler was a really popular card for quite some time, but cycled out as the 2-drops really, it just became obsolete kind of. But Horse Riders found in a lot of different aggro decks, whether you're playing Paladin because it has Divine Shield and Charge, whether you're playing, I've seen it in Tempo Rogue, and it actually made its way into the Pirate Warrior. So it's one of those just really decent early games card to play. Again, Charge and Divine Shield all in one card works very, very well. Garrison Commander found in a lot of meme decks, but not really a lot of super competitive decks. Looking at some of these other cards, Dark Bane and Light Bane. We tested these a while back in our kind of Priest and Paladin decks because they have a lot of stealth buffing cards, which synergize well with cards like Light Bane and Dark Bane. Overall, I think they were cool cards, but never got to see a whole lot of play, just because I really don't know. They're good cards, but no one really, they have to synergize with other stuff, and they're not good on their own. Like a 3-drop 3/4 is good on its own, but there's just better cards that are better on their own versus having to have a combo. And it's just, it's hard to explain. But people want cards that by themselves are good and can stand alone. When they synergize well, they're more powerful, of course, but more importantly, they don't want to only have the card shine when you have multiple cards for the combo, because overall the consistency of continuously drawing those cards is less than just having the card be good solely just on its own, just being good. So hopefully that did it justice, but I probably didn't explain it too well. Silverhand, good in Arena, not too much. None of these cards really stand out to me. Gormok the Impaler at one time was really good in Zoo, not so much anymore. Refreshment Vendor, however, this is a card found in a lot of the Reno decks, whether you're playing the Reno Warlock, the Reno Mage. So this is definitely a heavy hitter to the kind of the heal that they have in the deck. Not that it's a big heal, but it's still just a solid 4-drop. It's a 3/5 body, and it battle cries, which means it combos with Brand and it heals you for 4. So overall, it's a kind of, not, I wouldn't say a heavy hit, but it's a solid, you know, reduce and heal that those decks are going to get. The Twilight Guardian, wow. So this is definitely, again, one of the cards that's going to hurt the Dragon decks a lot. Not only is the BRM cycling out, but also cards like Twilight Guardian. So Dragon decks, I don't see where they're really going to stand after this. So rip Twilight Guardian, rip Dragons. You will be remembered. Nexus Champion Sarad, not really that big of a deal. For those of you who know me, Control Warrior has been one of my favorite decks, and just overall just kind of favorite class to play for quite some time now. And with the loss of Justicar Trueheart, with this, you know, TGT leaving us and going into wild mode, not that we can't play, you know, Justicar Trueheart in wild mode, but we can't play him in standard, which is where the competitiveness is at and where most of the player base is at. It just really, really sucks that this card is leaving. Not to say that every card should eventually, in my opinion, cycle out. I mean, having the same cards in the, you know, the meta for long periods of time is very not so good for the game. Keeping it fresh and whatnot is nice, but it's always just sad to see some of your favorite cards leaving, which is what Justicar Trueheart is for me. Not that it can only be played in Warrior, guys. This is also really good in Priest. At one point, it was found in mid-range Paladin, which it was really good in that as well. So it's not that it was only good in Warrior. The Kodo Rider. I call Stampeding Kodo and this card the same thing. They're all just Kodo Riders to me. This was found in Inspire decks. Not really that big of a deal that it's leaving us. Chill Maul, again, one of those dragon cards that was found in some dragon decks, not all. And it kind of was very good in the Patron days because you played Chill Maul against Patron Warrior, and they really had no way to get past this without their field dying. And their field most likely had Patrons on it. So just a good card overall, and is found in some Pyre decks. Or some dragon decks, I'm sorry. Sky Captain Crag. Some people play this card over Leroy in the pirate decks. I've tested it. It works pretty well. But Leroy has the extra 2 attack. So it's pretty nice. But either way, it'll be a sad that the pirate riding parrot is gone. Ice Howl, found in... Nah, I don't even want to say that. North Sea Kraken's good in Arena, and then the Frost Giant was found in the Echo Mage deck a long time ago, but unfortunately, it was also found in some OTK Warriors, but besides that, it's not really that popular of a card. So with that, that wraps up all of the kind of cards that stand out to me and are noteworthy in the Grand Tournament. We'll be talking about the League of Explorers in the next episode. I'm not sure when I'm going to release these and what order I'm going to release them in. So just keep that in mind, that I didn't want to put them all together because that video is going to be astronomically huge. So I figured I'd break them apart for those of you just wanting to know each individual expansion, what's kind of getting hit and what's going to be affected. So with that said, if I missed out on anything or you'd like to elaborate on anything I've explained, because, you know, I don't have all the time in the world to sit here and explain every card in the greatest detail, leave a comment in the section below, and I'm sure everybody who's looking for further information on that will find it useful and helpful. So with that said, thanks for watching. Of course, I'm Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.